Chris, what's on your mind? It says you want to discuss the mindset of young Earth creationists, or did you want to discuss like a particular argument from young Earth creationism?
Well, growing up, I deconstructed for about 10 years now. A big fan of your deconstruction zone. You really do some great work.
Thank you.
But anyway, I remember going to a seminar, and it's just the science stuff that they try to do, it becomes so convoluted. Like the geological layers, they all say back then they claim that after the flood, everything was a slurry, and the denser stuff and the lighter stuff, that's what makes it, and that's what makes it happen so quick and whatever, whatnot, really twisting, not trusting radiocarbon dating. It's just, and then you have the stuff like the Ark experience where they think that dinosaurs were on there, it's just nuts to me. That's all.
Yeah, I think when you talk about their mindset, it depends on who you're talking about. I think most young Earth creationist Christians are just getting their stuff spoon-fed to them. They're not actually critically thinking about it, and they don't have the time nor the spoons to do so. But if you're talking about something like Ken Ham or some of these other organizations, I think at this point they're actively lying. Because they've been refuted so much online. People have posted so many papers refuting what they're saying online, peer-reviewed papers and stuff like that, that they have to know. They're either deliberately ignorant or lying. And either way, it's just not good. But so again, it depends on, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush because, we're all human beings and we're all a little bit different. But I think that, if you wanted to put this stuff into categories, you've got the folks who believe because that's what they're told by people they trust. And then you have the people, those trusted people who are most likely actively lying at this point.
Well, and then here's another topic too, real quick. But Justin's video, I guess it was last week or something, I commented because the topic was original sin and why everything's deformed or just sickness happens or whatever. But I actually had a person, I was in a rehab, and I have Crohn's disease. So he told me that Crohn's disease happened because of Adam and Eve's original sin. Okay. And I stopped believing that a long, long time ago. And it's just just the mindset of these people, how they, if I were to believe in God and God gave me Crohn's disease for a purpose, it would drive me nuts. When I stopped believing and figured out, stuff just happens, I can definitely live a more peaceful life.
Yeah, condemning somebody just because they were born before they have a chance to act, and calling them evil and bad before they have a chance to actually prove themselves, it to me is just wrong and evil. I don't know. What do you think, Justin?
So I understand that Christians need a reason to explain the suffering, like the diseases and all that nonsense. But if suffering and diseases or natural disasters and whatnot, if those aren't entirely necessary for God to accomplish whatever goodness his end goal is, then it still falls in the bucket of unnecessary suffering, right? And as far as I'm concerned, causing someone to suffer unnecessarily breaks this idea of being completely just and being completely good and benevolent. So you just can't have a God that causes unnecessary suffering unless you're willing to abandon that particular notion of God. If you're willing to abandon the idea that God is good, willing to abandon the idea that God is just, then you can get to a point where the world that we see around us mirrors some kind of a deity figure. But at that point, if God is evil, then who gives a shit? I ain't gonna worship that guy. And why would he care if I'm what do I get by worshiping that guy? What I have to trust that evil deity that he's gonna do the right thing if I worship it is ridiculous.
Yeah. And if your God is omnipotent, all suffering is needless.
And pretty much.
And not only that, but the science of everything, everything coming from Adam and Eve, or all the animals on the ark, everything would be incest. to make everything happen. It just doesn't make sense. And it's so, I don't understand how people can believe that. That's all. So I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, but that's all I wanted to really say. And then another thing, on the algorithm of YouTube, there's a lot of people speculating that the rapture is coming in the end times, and they're putting out like the timelines.
Again,
Of course, because the Feast of Trumpets is coming.
just like last decade, and the decade before that, and the decade before that, and the century before that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
exactly. It's just it's nuts how
the end times are proof that Jesus Christ as a supernatural entity didn't exist, right? Because the end times haven't happened. They're supposed to happen in his lifetime. So, and they didn't. So guess what? He was wrong.
Yeah, but people just thinking that they can predict it all the time is just like nuts to me. You know, like, oh yeah, this is gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And
despite the Bible telling them that you can't predict it, if I'm not mistaken, Justin, I don't know if I quoted that. You know, that part.
So yeah, the Bible's tough because like Jesus clearly says, no man knows the day nor the hour, only the Father. But the problem is he also does give a hard cutoff in Matthew 16, saying that some of you standing here will not taste death until you see the Son of Man coming. And then Matthew 24 says roughly the same. This generation will not pass away until all of these things happen, meaning the signs of the end and Jesus coming back with all the angels to judge. So like you get this weird dichotomy where like the Bible's like, well, we don't know like when he's going to come back. And then Jesus is like, well, we know kinda like I'm going to come back before this and this. Right. But obviously Jesus didn't know either because he was wrong. So what are you going to do?
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the show. I'm always tuning in. You guys have a good night.
Cheers. You have a good one.
Thanks.